to Mama Monday. This is the part of my channel on Monday nights where I talk about decorating or style or antiques or just plain life. So tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about our family. We are a homeschool family, and I know that I've had a lot of people recently in my life talk to me about homeschool. It's becoming sort of like a new trend I've noticed in our area in the Southeast, and even with some of my friends on the West Coast in my home state of California are now becoming interested in homeschooling. And I get a lot of people asking me what it's like and how we got started in it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that while I'm waiting for my rice to go because I'm making dinner for my family. So first of all, we got started into homeschooling completely accidentally. I was never ever somebody who thought, this is my plan to homeschool. And if you are, if that is your plan, more power to you that you had a plan, because I didn't. My son has dyslexia, as does my husband. So that was always a struggle. I actually went to college for teaching. My major was English literature, and I planned on becoming a teacher, and I did teach for some time. When my son was in kindergarten, he went to public school, and he really struggled with reading. And the teacher would come to me and say, oh, you know, Gable is having to stay in at recess to finish this, or he's having to skip the assembly to finish this worksheet, or he didn't get this project done, and it was overwhelming. And I noticed a lot of his self-esteem was dropping, and it was just really affecting him. So because at that time I decided that I was going to start working from home and branching out into selling a lot of antiques at shows and make that sort of my part-time gig along with work at home, it worked out that we decided to homeschool. And the first set of books that I got for him, I took him out October in first grade. So it was pretty quickly. And let me first just say that there are wonderful teachers out there. I was a teacher. I completely think that the school system has wonderful people. I am not somebody who hates schools or thinks public schools are the devil, they're terrible. You know, I think there are some great public schools, and I think that there are some terrible public schools, just like there are some great private schools and there's some not so good private schools, and the same with charter schools and magnets and all of that. But you know, my son had some really good teachers. It just, he needs to work at a much slower pace. He does have a learning disability. So this is why we started homeschooling, and that's why it started working for us. The first set of books that I got was a Becca. Somebody recommended them to me. Now, I'll be honest, I was not really caring too much if it was Christian or secular at the time, because it was first grade and I was thinking this is pretty basic. But I did really appreciate that Becca did have a Christian perspective, and that it wasn't top heavy in any area. And by that I mean that sometimes people sacrifice the lesson by putting the emphasis, you know, they're trying to drive in you know, this point or that point, and they're sacrificing some of the material, and or vice versa, or they don't have anything in there that's connected to you know, a Bible lesson. So I thought that Rebecca had a good mix of that. I was pretty happy with it. Now that my son is 10 and he is going to be in 5th grade pretty soon here, I've come to realize that I think Rebecca kind of stalls out, in my opinion. I think that there are some better ones out there once you start getting into those upper elementary school years. You know, he was bullied a lot for his dyslexia. I don't want to play the victim card because I don't ever think of myself as a victim, but I was bullied too because, as I said before, I had leukemia as a little kid. So when I entered first grade, I still had zero hair. I had just come from my last round of chemotherapy. And so that was a big part of the decision for us to homeschool, was the bullying problem, which I know is an issue for a lot of children as well. He would come home time and time again with bruises. I physically saw some of, I actually saw the bullet at one point. We were still living in California, and I came and had lunch with him, and I physically saw another child hitting my child, and I had to restrain the mama bear that is me. And the principal was right next to me, and she's like, oh, we can't do anything because, you know, what are we supposed to do? We can't stop him. We just have to report the behavior. So that was very upsetting to me. My son is so laid back and easygoing. He's like my surfer kid. He has like the it's all good attitude. When I was a kid and I was bullied, I did not have that attitude. He's a lot nicer than I was. I actually remember one time I was repeatedly bullied about my hair so often, and then once the kids found out that I had cancer, they started saying, she has cooties, and they would run around the classroom and not let me touch them and not let me get near them. And there was this one girl I remember that kept teasing me so often about my hair. Finally, I remember that she got seated right in front of me, and she had this very long blonde hair that she always wore in a braid. And I remember one day, being the not too happy 6-year-old that I was at the time, I just cut that braid off, and I said, now both of us have really, really short hair. So, not what I would recommend, but that was my experience with bullying, and my kid was way nicer than I was. So that was actually part of our reason for homeschooling. And I've now gotten into kind of a mix of my own. I kind of mix spectrum, which is something that you can order online on Amazon, or you can go find it at Barnes & Nobles or Books A Million or a lot of bookstores. I mix that with Brain Quest, and then my son also takes classes online through virtual school. And I would say that virtual school, at least in our area, for our state of Florida, is pretty intense. Because it's for children that are also gifted. They don't have a separate program for children that have learning disabilities. So this is our first semester doing our virtual school, and I think it moves really, really fast. It's something that I would highly recommend you check out in your own area to see what their requirements are. I really, really like that he gets this chance to choose electives, but I would say that for my son, because he works at a slower pace, it's a lot to handle. If you are just getting started with homeschooling, I really recommend that you go to your county's website, and there's usually a tab that says home education, and that you look up what the requirements are for your state, because it varies wildly from state to state. There are some states, like I believe California, where you can basically homeschool, and if I'm correct, that you don't have to, you just have to notify the school in writing, and then once you start homeschooling, you can choose whatever curriculum you like. And then there's states like my state where once a year we have to check in with a certified teacher, and then that person, we have to show a portfolio of our yearly work, and they get to just assess that your child is progressing, that you are having them do, schoolwork for their age group, and that they are progressing, and that you are teaching them something. So I would say that homeschooling is like a job. I mean, really, it has become sort of a second or third job for me, depending on where I'm at in the year, of whether I'm selling antiques or working at home, and it can take up a lot of time. I only have one kiddo, so I can only imagine those families that have a lot of kids. Some people, I've heard people be like, oh, I think it's really, really easy. And then there's people like me where I think it's worth it if that's what you need. But are there times when I see the school bus go by and I'm like, please wait, put my child on the bus? Yes, definitely there's some times, because I think that my son misses, some of that childhood interaction. I do have him in art classes. That's our my microwavable rice going off. I do have him in classes, and I do have a lot of socialization going on, but he's an only kiddo, only child, so I know that he misses some of those, you know, just the school days, assembly, PE, things that we all had. I know that I had as a 90s kid growing up in the 90s. So that's just my review of homeschool. That's a part of our life. I would say that it's a really big decision, not one to take lightly. It is sort of like its own path, and it's really, really hard to get back into the school system once you start on that. So I would say just, you know, really think about it. If it's right for your family, I think it's totally 100% worth it. But it's not something that is easier than public school. That's my dog shaking his ears. It is definitely, I would say, a lot harder. And you have to be really, really committed to working with your child, finding curriculum that works with them, and finding their pace. But that's just a little bit about us and our family. And I'm gonna get started on finding our next Pickin spot and working on our next treasure hunts. And I'll see you at the Pickin place. Thanks, guys.